All right. We'll see about that. Why am I out of focus? Son of a gun. Man, the technical issues, right? Hold on here. See if we can't. All right. Stretch. Sorry about that. It's completely out of focus there. All right, we got it dialed in now, and we got our first person here. So look at that, just in time. We got a big paw up there. All right. So once again, technical difficulties, always technical difficulties. It can never just be easy. What's that? SU. I don't know what that means, but hello. Oh, man. Okay. So what's up? Biden sniffs kids. By the way, if it comes to screen names, when it comes to usernames, that's it. I don't think it gets any better. Biden sniffs kids. Sup? What is going on? We are talking some stuff today. Boy, we got big news, right? Aren't we excited that Kamala Harris is Biden's vice president? Are we loving it? I'm loving it a little bit. I think it's awesome. I think it's the funniest thing in the world. I think it's great. I really do, because I think it's going to put a lot of people. It's going to put a lot of people on notice. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy out there, and I think this call makes it pretty clear that we've got an issue. So I'm pretty excited about the Kamala Harris thing. I'm going to be hitting on Chicago and the riots and the looting that took place. And congratulations on it's over for Black Lives Matter. In my opinion, it's over in terms of justifying this movement as a something that's trying to help Black people. After what happened in Chicago, and after that organizer came out and said what she said, I think it's done. I'm going to get into that, but I want to talk about Kamala Harris first. I am just in love with this story. I really am in love with it. First of all, I hope you guys, if you haven't done it and you haven't seen it, go and look at the moment that her campaign ended. It's amazing when Tulsi Gabbard took her out of the race. I think they just ran out of Black people to protest, to be honest. Oh my goodness. The moment that Tulsi Gabbard took her out of the race is one of the great moments. And the funniest thing about nominating Kamala Harris, after she got destroyed in the race and literally called Joe Biden racist, and said, is on the record as saying she believes Joe Biden's sexual assault accuser. Right? She agrees to be the vice president of somebody who she then believes is racist and sexually assaulted a woman. So that's a little problematic. Man, my camera's still not quite right. Get my hand up there. I don't like it. Yeah, it's better. That's better. So I got my medals in the background. Now you can all see that I'm a fit dude. Anyway. So that's a little bit that's going to come back to get her, right? I mean, she called him a racist. She says she believed the person who's accused him of sexual assault, and now she's the VP candidate. She's going to have to answer that. And I don't know if there's a good answer for that. I don't know if there's a good answer for, yep, he's a racist. Yep. I think, I do believe that he sexually assaulted this woman, but hey, he's better than Trump, orange man bad. I think is that it? Is that going to be the only defense for that? But I think even bigger than that is going to be her record on her criminal justice record. That's what ended her campaign. That's why she couldn't get anywhere. One of the interesting things is that everybody kind of knew Biden was going to have to pick a Black woman, which is ridiculous on its face. It's racist. It's insane to say, I know what the race and gender of the person I'm going to put in this position is in advance. I mean, doesn't that even violate the Civil Rights Act? In reality, doesn't that violate the Civil Rights Act? Doesn't saying I'm only going to hire this race person for a job violate the Civil Rights Act? I think it does. I think that's an actual violation of the Civil Rights Act. I guess he probably never came out and said it, but I mean, we kind of all knew that was the case, and we knew that was going to happen. So I don't know, man. I think there might be something there. But anyway, I'm going to set that aside. There's this article in here about Kamala Harris from Reason Magazine, and let's see here. Presumptive Democrat nominee Joe Biden has picked Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, making her the first African-American vice presidential candidate in U.S. history. Although if you look at her history, she ran as an Indian in California. That was kind of the thing. And of course, they also said that she's the first Black woman elected. I don't know. There's questions about her racial background. I don't care about that really, but I don't know. They always want to talk about this is the first that or whatever. So it's worth talking about, I guess. Harris has positioned herself during the primary campaign as a reformer who has tirelessly worked to correct the abuses of the criminal justice system, and she confronted Biden in the debates about his atrocious record on race and law and order policy. We've literally been watching months of protests, and you know that these protesters primarily lean to the left. Not that race issue. I don't know why all this is always left-right, but that's how it is in America right now. You know these protesters lean to the left. You know the majority of them are going to walk in and vote for Joe Biden. And it's right here, his atrocious record on race and law and order policy. Biden will rely on Harris to energize the ticket and win over the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. The irony of Biden's decision, particularly in the wake of widespread protests against police misconduct and racial injustice, is that Harris has her own troubling record on criminal justice issues. So it breaks down kind of like her different positions throughout the years on where she has stood on high-profile criminal justice issues. So the first section here is about sex work. It talks about her political rise, this high-profile campaign against alleged sex traffickers, and that's great. All right, let's fight sex trafficking. I mean, that's a topic that's kind of at the high profile right now. But what it goes on to say, what she's actually done is to help throw women in jail for having consensual sex while trampling on the rule of law to advance her own political ambitions. Now, you may guess that I'm reading this out of Reason Magazine. As you can tell by the tone, it's very libertarian. I'm a libertarian, so obviously I agree with a lot of what they have to say, but also as a libertarian, I like to read things that they don't really have a Republican or Democrat dog in the fight. So that's kind of why I read out of this out of Reason Magazine when I'm looking for stuff to put out here. So ignoring the pleas of sex workers and human rights advocates for over a decade, she fought campaigns to decriminalize consensual adult prostitution in California. As California's Attorney General, she helped lead a statewide program to get truckers to report suspected sex workers to police. These policies didn't stop traffickers, but they did land plenty of sex workers behind bars. Can you imagine being a woman and you want to end sex trafficking? So you're going to the Johns, which is the demand that creates sex work, right? If there was no demand for sex work, there would be no sex work. But you're going to the Johns, the creators of the demand, and asking them to report the sex workers so you can lock these women up, as if a sex worker working at a truck stop is anywhere in the realm of responsible for how she ended up there. I mean, come on, come on, man. I mean, it's terrible. Consensual sex between adults should be legal. I mean, just put a camera on it, I guess, call it pornography, and I guess then it's perfectly fine, but whatever. But to go after and target sex workers, people in the most vulnerable position, women who genuinely need help, is disgusting. Harris fought to destroy Backpage.com, a classified ad site that sex workers use to find and screen clients, even though she publicly admitted that the site's founders, Michael Lacey and James Larkin, were protected from prosecution under federal speech law. But a month before Election Day, while running for Senate, Harris went ahead and had them arrested anyway, parading them before cameras on pimping charges, which then were promptly dismissed by a judge. So that's political theater. And this is one of my issues with Kamala Harris. One of my issues with modern politics in general. She's not a leader. If you look at her history, she's a political opportunist. She marched these two people a month before the election so that she could present herself as tough on this type of crime, even though she knew the charges were going to get dismissed. It's a misuse of taxpayer money just to promote yourself in your campaign, which is, again, modern American politics, right? That's how we do it here. Let's see. When Harris got to Congress, she kept up her crusade, becoming a big proponent of the 2018 law known as FOSTA SESTA. The result was that many sex workers had no choice but to return to the streets, where soliciting clients is considerably more dangerous. But she did decline to intervene in a real underage sex trafficking scandal that involved dozens of police and other local authorities in the Bay Area. This is on Reason Magazine. There's links to these other stories. I'll put the link. I'll put this link down in the comments so you can read it yourself and follow the links to some of these other stories to kind of check out what they're saying here. So there's a long part here on prosecutorial misconduct. I'm not going to read through all of that. I think my big issue here is there's two things on the war on drugs and mass incarceration. And she's like this now today that all this stuff is coming to light. And we're really starting to have serious conversations about the war on drugs and mass incarceration and all those things. All of a sudden now she is very much an outspoken critic of the mass incarceration. But it says, Ray, she's worked hard over the years to lock more people up for longer. And once these people were in prison, Harris saw to it that they'd have a hell of a time getting out. For her recent face, Harris chose not to endorse proposed sentencing reforms on the California ballot in 2012 and 2014, and she defended the constitutionality of cash bail until 2016. This is historically important. If you haven't watched the documentary 13 on Netflix, they get into the mass incarceration thing, and they get into how Democrats kind of moved to the law and order because they kept getting crushed on law and order since Nixon declared the war on drugs. Then Reagan doubled down with his crime bill. And then, of course, the 94 crime bill. Democrats kept becoming more and more and more in favor of tough action, tough political, or, they wanted to look tough on drugs. They wanted to look strong, law and order. They wanted to be that party because they were getting beat by Republicans. This is the problem with politics today, right? They could have led the way and talked about rehab and treatment and all these other things. But instead, they saw the quickest path to victory was to adopt this message that the Republicans had been putting out. And so they also became a tough on drugs party. That's what they ran as. That's how they got elected. And now all of a sudden that this is coming to light, they're like, oh, no, it's racist and it's terrible and mass incarceration. This is the party that's been doing it all along. It's funny when you look at the history of the Democrat Party, you think about how they were the KKK, how they opposed desegregation, they opposed, they fought to continue slavery, all these things historically. Then you look and you say, well, the party switched, and now the Republicans are the racist party. You can, hey, look, say what you want about the Republicans. The Democrats are selling themselves as the party that is not racist. They're the ones who are here to rescue Black people, but they've been strong proponents of mass incarceration for decades. They keep revising this history. But anyway, so go and watch 13 on Netflix if you haven't done it. And this positions that she held on mass incarceration and the war on drugs over the years, and now that her current change is purely politically motivated, because if she really cared, she could have had these conversations a long time ago when she held a position of power where she could have done something about mass incarceration, at least in the state of California. She could have been seen as a pioneer, and people could be looking back at her 10 years ago and saying, hey, this person has been an outspoken proponent of decriminalization, of getting nonviolent offenders out of prison, of not, over policing and so on and so forth. But that's not what she did. That's not who she is. So now what, in 4 years ago, she changed her mind. Now we're supposed to buy off on her as a champion for Black people. It's ridiculous. Harris's office also fought in order to reduce California prison populations after the U.S. Supreme Court determined the conditions amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. Though she later claimed to be shocked at what they had done, Harris's attorneys argued that nonviolent offenders should stay behind bars because the state needed their cheap labor. Think about that. If you go and watch 13, I keep looking over at this screen because that's where my actual live stream is. So anyway. If you go and watch 13 on Netflix, one of the issues is it's a discussion of the 13th Amendment. And in the 13th Amendment, there's actually an exclusion. The 13th Amendment ended slavery unless you are a criminal, essentially. And they talk about how that was used to re-enslave Blacks at the end of the Civil War in the South, so they could just arrest them, put them in prison, and put them right back to work. So for Harris to fight in order to reduce California's prison population, and that Harris's attorney is saying that non-violent offenders should stay behind bars because the state needed their cheap labor. Wow, this is all going to come up. That's what gets me. I can't believe it. I just can't. I can't wrap my mind around it. And the other thing is Kamala Harris wasn't even popular amongst the black community. Sanders, Warren, pulled ahead of her pretty consistently. So, I mean, she wasn't even that popular of a candidate. She's incredibly problematic. And I said this earlier on my Facebook page. To me, it's a real slap in the face. I mean, for 2 months, we've watched these protests, and I'm going to get into the Black Lives Matter, what happened in Chicago the other day. I'm going to get into that shortly, but it's a real slap in the face because look, I don't support the movement. Anybody who watches my videos and follows me on TikTok or Facebook or anywhere else knows that I'm not a proponent of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think they're problematic. I'm going to get into that in just a little bit. But I know this, and I know people who are passionate about Black Lives Matter. And I know people who care about Black Lives Matter and are passionate about it and genuinely believe it to be an organization that is designed to help Black people. Let's see. I'm going to take a timeout here. Random question. What is your thoughts on the two-party system? I personally believe it is corrupt. I'm going to be happy to answer that question. Let me finish this thought. It's a slap in the face to those people. I mean, shame on the Democrat Party for not recognizing the tone of the people who they purport to represent and go, look, we can't nominate somebody with this kind of history. Our voters want this. And I'm also going to say shame on the voters who are going to walk into the booth, who've changed their profiles to the little black fist and who've changed their banners to, Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. Shame on them who are going to walk into that booth and vote for these two. Shame on you. And don't lecture me anymore. Unless you start your sentence by saying, look, I'm not voting for Biden and Harris, but I support Black Lives Matter. I'm willing to have a conversation with you. I'm willing to hear you out. But if you're going to walk into the booth and vote for those two, don't talk to me like I'm a bad person because I don't support Black Lives Matter, because you're voting for these people. Okay. These people. So Biden Sniffs Kids asked me, I'm going to say that username as many times as I can. Asks random question. What is your thoughts on the two-party system? I personally believe it is corrupt. It is corrupt. There's a million different ways that we can point out that the two-party political system is broken. First and foremost is millions of people are going to walk into the booth and vote for people they don't believe in. You should have a better option than that. And you should have faith that you can go into a voting booth and vote for somebody other than a Democrat or a Republican. And then that person's going to have fair representation in the media. That person's going to be allowed to get on the debate stage. If you look at Joe Jorgensen's campaign right now, what's trending on Twitter there is #LetHerSpeak. You should check that out. We're trying to get her onto the debate stage. I understand we can't let every single person who wants to run for president, or even every single person who represents a party, we can't have 50 people debating. I get it. They had 20 at the Democrat debates. I guess that was okay, but whatever. Can we get 4? I think honestly, you have Republicans and Democrats left and right. That's what they represent. And then you have like the Green Party, which is a further left party. Then I think that's where your progressives, right? Your real progressives, Sanders type supporters might want to navigate over to that party. And then you have Republicans, and then you have libertarians who, you look at your Rand Paul, Thomas Massey type folks who would gravitate towards the Libertarian Party. And now you'd have this ability to sell ideas. And I think pretty quickly you'd find that the Democrats and Republicans would become irrelevant because they're the corporate parties. They're the parties that are sponsored by big business, by billionaires and pharma and big oil, and all these different special interests are funneling money into the Democrat and Republican Party. And if you had candidates on the debate stage who could stand up there and say, look, I'm a person of integrity, I'm not taking any of that money, I think that would resonate with voters. I think it would resonate with voters on both the left and the right. And so these two parties holding political power tells the corporate sponsors, hey, this is where to send the money because we're going to be in control. We're going to be in power. And then we know that they don't respond to us. They respond to the lobbyists. They write laws for the lobbyists. So they spend 70% of their time raising money to get reelected, and we keep voting for them. So yeah, the system's horribly corrupt, and it limits our choices, and it's very divisive. You're a Republican or a Democrat, you're not listening to a Republican or a Democrat, right? I mean, the nice thing about being a libertarian is people will actually engage me in conversation. If I walked up and I said, well, I'm a Republican and I'm talking to a Democrat, I'm done. If I throw on a MAGA hat, I'm done. They're not listening to me. But I could probably walk into a Black Lives Matter rally with my Jorgensen for President hat on, and I'd be okay. And people would at least be willing to engage me in conversation. So yeah, I think it's corrupt. It's divisive. Not a fan. So to answer that question, I'm a little long-winded there, but thanks for posing a question. Black Lives Matter. Speaking of which, I'm pounding on them all the time, and it's disappointing. I'm actually getting kind of tired of it, but this story Black Lives Matter. You guys, there was riots and looting in Chicago a couple nights ago, I think night before last. And first, the background on this story is that somebody was shot and killed. No, not killed. Sorry. Shot and wounded by police, taken to the hospital, non-serious injuries, going to survive. Black person, obviously, that's why we riot when something happens to a black person. So taken to the hospital. And the rumor mongering was that a black child had been shot by police. I think like a 15-year-old shot 5 times or something like that. And I saw this from people I know on Facebook. They're like, oh yeah, this is why they rioted. This is why they rioted. And I'm like, no, that's not what happened. So in order to get the riots going, people actually went out and started spreading rumors that this child was shot. This was a complete lie. That's a scary thing, folks. When you look at Black Lives Matter, I've talked about the fact that their founders are trained Marxists, self-admitted trained Marxists. I've talked about that. A trained Marxist isn't just somebody who understands Marx theories. This is a person who knows how to foment and create civil unrest. They know how to do it. It is their primary purpose. And that's an issue for a couple of reasons. First, their goal is civil unrest. They don't care about anybody. Their goal is to create civil unrest. Black people are dying as a result of these riots and protests. Black businesses are burning. They don't care about that. They want the unrest. That's the goal. It's not to help black people. They could care less about black people, about the black community in this country. Their goal is to tear down the system. That's just how it is. And from the beginning, I've been saying, hey, these guys are looting and rioting. That's not helping the black community. When is Black Lives Matter leadership going to speak on this? When are they going to come out and condemn this violence? When are Democrats going to come out and condemn this violence? And to Lori Lightfoot's credit, finally, she stepped up and said, we can't have this. These people are going to be prosecuted, hundreds of arrests or 100 arrests or whatever. But so these have been my issues with Black Lives Matter from the beginning. So you have this protest, this riot. I'm not going to call it a protest. It was a riot and looting. It wasn't even a riot. It was just looting on Chicago's Miracle Mile. And I'll just read this quick story. It's from Newsweek. A Black Lives Matter Chicago organizer has defended the mass looting that took place in the city early Monday, calling it reparations. Ariel Atkins spoke outside a police station in the South Loop on 18th and South State Street on Monday, where protesters had gathered to call for the release of those who were arrested. I don't care if somebody decides to loot a Gucci or a Macy's or a Nike, because that makes sure that that person eats, that makes sure that that person has clothes, Atkins said, according to NBC Chicago. I don't care if somebody decides to loot a Gucci or a Macy's, right? How's looting Gucci going to loot a grocery store at least, right? That's reparations. That is reparations. Anything they want to take it, because these businesses have insurance. They're going to get their money back. My people aren't getting anything. My people? This divisive race baiting nonsense, I tell you. And I don't know about business insurance. I should really look that up, because I've worked in the insurance industry. And most insurance has an exclusion for riots, um, where riots, protests, civil unrest. Um, there we go. Over riots. There you go. So they have these exclusions within their policies that say, we're not going to cover civil unrest. We're not going to cover riots, looting. Those kinds of things aren't covered. Intentional acts oftentimes aren't covered. Vandalism might be, but damage to the physical. So part of a business in its contents that's caused by the riot, civil, commotion, or vandalism is generally covered under a standard business owner's policy. So there you go. It is typically covered. All right. Well, I've been mistaken on that one. But good luck getting new insurance. Good luck with the new premiums in that area. Hey, I'm going to reopen this business. Well, look, you're going to have this insurance. It's going to be more expensive. So if you live in a neighborhood that's been impacted by rioting and looting, you're going to see a lot of these businesses not come back because the policies are going to start getting too expensive. In particular, in places where they're defunding police. So think about that for a minute. You're defunding police. You are raising the risk of riot damage. So insurance is nothing but an assessment of risk. It's more expensive for you to have homeowners insurance if you live out away from a fire hydrant. It's more expensive for you to have homeowners insurance if you have a fireplace in your house. Those represent risks. It's more expensive if you have a dog. So imagine being in a city where we've had rioting, we've had looting, that in particular poor areas that disproportionately serve minorities. You burn down a grocery store, they're going to go back and try and rebuild, but then their insurance premiums are going to be so much more expensive because now there's also no police there, or there's a much smaller police force there. So the likelihood of more looting, more vandalism, more loss through theft, all these other different things, now it's increased. So the risk is higher. Now the insurance is higher. So you're taking these businesses and you're making it so that in these underserved communities that you claim to care so much about already, suffering from lack of service, and you're making it more difficult for people to serve them. Well, that's a terrible thing. But more importantly, like I said, this is, even Jesse Jackson tweeted earlier on Monday that the looting that had taken place in Chicago was morally wrong. He wrote, "This act of pillaging, robbing, and looting in Chicago was humiliating, embarrassing, and morally wrong, and must not be associated with our quest for social justice and equality." Think about that. I've been saying, where is the left? These people don't represent reasonable Democrats. Reasonable, and I don't like Jesse Jackson. I think he's a race baiter, but regular Democrats have to start shouting this stuff down. You've got to nip this in the bud. Most Democrats aren't on the side of rioting and looting. They can't be, right? They stop letting this crazy far left ideology take over your party. It's ridiculous. If you're a Republican, you're probably happy because study after study shows that rioting and looting actually help Republicans win elections. So just keep that in mind. But so he writes that tweet. But Atkins maintained that Jackson has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. She added, "Jesse Jackson was not there for the creation of Black Lives Matter. Jesse Jackson can keep his opinions to himself." This is the left eating itself, by the way. Jesse Jackson, love him or hate him, has been a proponent for civil rights for a long time in this country. Black Lives Matter, keep your opinions to yourselves. Do you understand what this movement's really about? It's crazy. 400 officers were deployed to stop the mass looting and unrest that broke out in the hours after the police shot a man in Inglewood neighborhood in Chicago's South Side on Sunday. So I was telling the story. So they spread the rumor about a 15-year-old being shot by police. What actually happened was police were called, responded to a call, and the call was that somebody had a gun. So the police go out, and this person allegedly fires at the police, and the police return fire. The person was 20 years old, armed, and fired at police, and they shot back. What I want to know is, do people protest if they know that was the story? But when you look at a group of professional agitators, let's go and spread a story that'll get people out there, because what we want is civil unrest. So now they're protesting for the release of the looters. They're getting to a point where they're saying that Black people should be excluded from criminal consequences, and it should just be chalked up to reparations. That's where we're getting. That's where they're pushed. This isn't about helping Black people. This is about civil unrest. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know what the end goal here is. I know that, like I said, they want to disrupt systems. They hate capitalism. They're trained Marxists. I would imagine the organizers of this event are trained Marxists. I would imagine the big money behind Black Lives Matter, and there's big money behind Black Lives Matter out there. We know that Soros has helped fund them. What was it? 10,000 AR-15s were found coming into the country from China as we're going through this civil unrest. There's big stuff going on behind this. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Black people are being targeted and recruited who would be sensitive to this kind of a movement, who are Marxists or Marxist leaning, and they're being recruited into this organization, trained on how to create civil unrest, and then being sent out into these cities and waiting for the opportunity to present itself. That's what it feels like is happening. It really does. And I think there's complicity. I don't know. I think the media is complicit. I think some law enforcement agencies are complicit. I think that if we had seen the entire George Floyd video, I think there would have been protesting. I don't think that George Floyd should have died. I don't think the police handled that situation properly. But the narrative that these were white supremacists running and gunning, or that Chauvin was some racist or running and gunning to kill Black people, I think the video destroys that narrative. I think that, and I also think that he's going to get off. I don't think that video, when you watch the whole video, I think that you look at Chauvin and they jumped the gun with the murder charge, and I don't think that's going to hold up when you watch the whole video. I think manslaughter, negligent homicide, something along those lines may have held up. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think murder is going to stick in this particular case. So, but this is it, man. This is it for me. You can't defend looting. You can't defend looting and tell me that your cause is to elevate the Black community in this country. Do you think, who's coming to your table to help? No. This isn't what this is about. This is something bigger. I really do believe that. I believe this is something bigger. Wouldn't surprise me if China's playing a role. It wouldn't surprise me if, this is I don't know. There's more to it than this. And we're in an election year, and Trump has been taking China on pretty big time. There's more to it. There's definitely more to it, because the purpose is clearly just to create unrest now. I really think that they're trying to bait Donald Trump into doing something unpopular. I really think that I think they're happy that he's putting federal troops in places. And I'm thinking that what they want is to capture on camera federal troops in camouflage shooting protesters. That's what I think. That's their goal. I think that's what they want to see, so that they can create public outrage and more unrest. So I will be back. I don't know if I'm going to do a live tomorrow. I'm going to try and get a live done tomorrow, but I got a lot going on tomorrow. I've got to pick my wife up at the airport. Yay, she's coming home. And so I got a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. So I'm going to try, but I may not get to one tomorrow. I'll definitely have one. I'll definitely do another one of these things before Friday. I might just post a standard video tomorrow, because I can usually crank those out pretty quick. Something short and sweet. Check the news and drop some commentary. But hey, thanks. I know my Biden Sniffs kids is probably the only one still here. I appreciate you sticking around. Thanks for coming. Thanks to everybody who stopped by. Share the video if you liked it. Hit the subscribe, turn on the notifications, share it with your friends and family, because we are spreading libertarian propaganda and we're having a good time doing it. Thanks very much. And we'll catch you guys next time.